Ladies and gentlemen, all days are good, but some days are even better because some days you're in the middle of the beautiful California canyons in a beautiful yellow Lotus Emira. And not only that, it's the V6 with a stick. So, before we drive this awesome car, we got to talk a little bit about it, about why it's so interesting. So, this car debuted in 2021, and since then, it's taken a long time to kind of come to fruition. In fact, I had to come all the way down here to California, which I don't really mind, to drive it because there's just not really any in Canada. Now, what is the Emira? Basically, it's the last of its kind for Lotus sports cars. It's the last gas engine only, manual transmission sports car that Lotus plans to make. They might break that plan and change it later, but as of now, if you want a manual transmission gas-powered Lotus, the road stops here. So get your orders in. This car is kind of an evolution of the Lotus Evora, the 2+2 mid-engine, and in fact, the engine behind us is the same supercharged 3.5-liter Toyota V6 as the Evora had. 400 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque and beautiful supercharger noises. That's pretty cool. But that engine has been around in the same form since 2010, but really, I don't need to change it because this car weighs just 3,000 pounds. That's 200 less than a C8 Corvette. That's a lot less than the new Nissan 400Z. It's the lightest car in its class, kind of by a lot. It's like Cayman weight, Porsche Cayman weight, and it's about the same cost, but once we get on the road, I'll show you that it's a little bit more special than those cars. It's also worth knowing that you could buy this car with a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. That is an AMG unit. It makes 365 horsepower, and it's actually the same unit as you'd find in the GLA 45 AMG. I haven't driven it, but you could buy it with that engine. So you actually pay $3,000 more in Canada to get the V6. The V6 is about $129,000 and change. The 4-cylinder is about $126,000. So a bit of money, but not that crazy. But you guys aren't here to hear me talk. You're here to see this thing on those roads. So let's put it in first, and I'll show you what it's like to drive. So this is actually the first Lotus, new, old, or classic, I've ever driven. I'm coming in completely new to this brand. I've never driven any other Lotus. And I honestly didn't know what to expect. I knew that Lotuses are fun to drive, but I'd also heard things about how they, have cottage country build quality. But this is a new era of Lotus, really the whole way through. And I think my quick take is that this is the bridge between the old and the new generations of Lotus. You still have old school Lotus hallmarks like the manual shifter, that supercharged engine behind your head, the lightweight, and gasoline being burned in copious amounts. But then there's new things, like I have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in here. The interior is actually impressive. It's certainly on the same level as a Porsche you would buy. There's a certain minimalism in here that's just very pleasing. And you used to never spend any time talking about a Lotus interior other than to point out that the buttons were from like a Dodge Neon or something. But this is an actual good interior. It's a good place to sit, which you don't expect. You expect that it drives great, but I didn't expect everything else to be just as good. Let's start from the outside and work our way in. This car looks like a mini supercar. It looks fabulous. We've been stopped all over town in Los Angeles where people are jaded. People have asked us what kind of Ferrari this is. People have pulled U-turns just to talk to us about us. This car turns heads, and it's in the same price bracket as a Cayman, which you probably see 3 of every single day, and no one really cares about. So the looks on the outside, absolutely flawless. Oh, windows down for the sound check. Here we go, in the tunnel. How was that? So, that's a good point to talk about the engine. That 3.5-liter V6 that was born for Camry duty, and now it's behind us in a mid-engine sports car. And it is fabulous. You might think that because it shares bones with humble Toyotas that it's not worth your time. you're so wrong. In the same way that a Ford GT40 shares a V8 with a couple pickup trucks, putting it in this home with this transmission in this car transforms it into something that feels genuinely exotic. 400 horsepower isn't that much anymore, but I think the whole thing I keep coming back to with this car is that it's just right. 400 horsepower feels just right in this car. I don't feel like I'm waiting on it to go down the straights like a Toyota 86, and I also don't feel like I'm strapped to a rocket like a McLaren. It is the perfect amount to enjoy on these roads. You know, I have just enough power. I've got to rev it to get the most out of it. It is a dream sports car engine, and it has regular Toyota hallmarks, like it runs nice and smooth, it loves RPM, and I would think it's pretty reliable in the long term. So the engine surpassed my expectations. I can't say how much of a fan I am of this engine. It suits the car perfectly, and I love that it's supercharged and not turbo. You really don't hear the supercharger unless you're properly on it. It's like a Dodge Hellcat in that sense. But when you're on it, it's almost all you can hear. RPM it. And we can't go past the engine without talking about the shifter. It is bar none the greatest shifter I've experienced in a production car. It is the best. The weight, the action of it. You could even, they have the linkage exposed beneath it. It lights up. You can, as a passenger, you can see the linkage working. That's like something you get in a $400,000 hypercar. Like, this is $130,000. And that doesn't even take into account how good it feels. The weight of it, the gears are exactly where you want it. Like, it's perfect. I have literally never driven a better shifter. You just want to go through the gears again and again just to do it. And if you don't get the manual with the V6, because it is available with the 6-speed automatic as well, you're a chump. And now let's go inside, where this is a first edition car, so it's got some luxury like premium sound system, extra leather. But in general, the interior is so nice. We were able to fit with my passenger here 2 carry-on bags and 2 backpacks in this car, which makes it completely usable for a weekend trip, which, you know, is not a given in a small sports car in this segment. And inside, everything's covered in leather. There's no squeaks or rattles. It's a really, really quality product. Like, I just can't get over the fact that the interior is so good. And having Apple CarPlay in here is a godsend. It really transforms the interior. There are like bits and pieces I can recognize from other cars, and I swear that parts of the infotainment system are a lot like a McLaren. But overall, the interior is amazing. It's not a penalty box. The seats are a nice blend of, I think, being comfortable and supportive. They're definitely on the more comfortable end of that equation. They're more comfortable than supportive, but they're really, really good. And now the part you've been waiting for, the handling. How does this car drive? And you know, it seems like an easy thing to say that the yellow mid-engine manual transmission Lotus drives great, but it's here. It does. And not only that, it surpasses my expectations, not only on twisty roads like this, but also on crappy streets with potholes. There's not a situation where it's not great. There are some things I don't love. For example, the pedal box is extremely narrow. You can kind of I don't have very big feet, but I'm also stepping on my own shoes a lot in this car because of the way the front wheel well intrudes in the pedal box. So if you've got big feet, you should really try this one on for size first, because you may not be able to fit. Also, the steering wheel is shaped like an octagon. I don't know why they did that. It's like flat here, and a flat bottom. And the steering rack isn't that fast. So I feel like sometimes I'll be grabbing for parts of the wheel that aren't there, and given the amount I have to turn the wheel, I would prefer a round one. But that's just me, that's personal preference, but those are the gripes I have with the driving experience in the interior of the car. And now it's time to talk about the dollars and cents. I think this is flat out an incredible value. For $130K plus delivery and fees and such, you get a car that most people are going to think costs $250,000. You're going to have the only one, and it shines on city streets and canyons, all while delivering like a bunch of great sounds and sensations. I really don't think you can do better for the money. In conclusion, I am shocked at how much I love this car. I thought it was going to be just another player in the mid-level sports car segment, but this is the leader. This is the one. And if you're watching this review thinking that's so cool and that you want one, you better get your money in, because the days of the V6 manual option on the Emira are numbered, as they gradually are going to phase this car into that 4-cylinder automatic, which with a manual is not available. So if you're seeing this and you want one, you better open your checkbook, because these kinds of cars aren't going to be around forever. And when they're gone, that's it. At the end of my week with it, I'll be sad to get back Lotus, because I just know that these kinds of experiences, these light, manual transmission, gas-powered sports cars, they're just getting harder to find. And I get the sense there won't be many more of them in 5 more years. So for Driving.ca, I'm Clayton Seams, and for more sports car reviews, news, and information, don't forget to check out our website, Driving.ca, where you will find my full written review of this car. And now, I'm going to enjoy the rest of this amazing road.